Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Zix200. Normally I do these videos in a very scripted way. I want to try something a little different, go off script, just because I really like this subject. And I don't mind if I get a little bit sidetracked here and there. But I definitely want to talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. What makes people do what they do, why they would do it in a certain way. Things like that, of that nature, where you really have to conceptualize what people are doing, right? So let's just make this one quick for the first part, where an extrinsic motivation is you are being rewarded for something. You have done a thing, and a game, a person gives you a thing, whether it be a game giving you a skin, for example, getting 50 kills with a knife. You get a skin that basically you can use on anybody that lets your knife look pretty, right, in Call of Duty. Or you get 100 kills with your machine gun, and then all of a sudden you can have a machine gun that looks pretty. And that is an extrinsic motivation, right? Now, an intrinsic motivation would be internalizing these things, okay? For example, doing something that a game or a person would not consider to reward you for, right? So, for example, it's a trail of breadcrumbs, right? In League of Legends, you get a monetary value of killing somebody, right? Like, you kill somebody, they give you a little bit extra money so you can go buy more items, right? And that's your extrinsic reward. You kill somebody, you get money. The intrinsic reward is taking that and internalizing it as, I'm better than this person, right? Like, I've gotten the kill, I've defeated this person. Like, the game rewards you for that, but then the intrinsic motivation would be, I'm going to get into a game and kill as many people as I can because it's fun, right? Like you enjoy it, you internalize it. So what are we talking about today in regards to that? So I had a thought process a little while ago, and this is going to include Dead by Daylight, this is going to include League of Legends, and this is going to include Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes, and The Room, okay? So first of all, I want to talk about kind of the puzzle aspect of this. So when you have a puzzle and you're talking about a puzzle game like The Room is a very interesting game, right? Where you go around, you solve puzzles, and then a door opens, and then you have another puzzle to solve, right? Well, the huge thing about The Room is the lack of time limit. You have as much time as you want to do whatever you want, to experiment, and the act of discovery is your extrinsic motivation, right? So intrinsically, what you want to see is, intrinsically, I want to finish this game. Like, finishing the game isn't going to give me anything, but because there's all of these little doors opening and the act of discovery throughout, it makes it a rewarding experience, right? Now, if we look at Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, it is a game where you do have a time limit, right? So what they decided to do was make each panel its own little puzzle. And by making each panel its own little puzzle, what ends up working out really well is, through failure, you aren't discouraged because of an extrinsic number, right? So like, it's like, oh, well, extrinsically, right? I have completed three of the four squares, right? Like 3 of the 4 puzzles. So you can, by keeping that as a marker, you can engage even more with the game by it rewarding you throughout, and knowing by how many rewards, how close you were to completing it, right? And the completion gives you a new puzzle, so that is also considered extrinsic. But to get to the end of the game is that intrinsic motivation. So because you know that at the end of it, you don't get anything out of it, right? Like puzzle games, you don't get anything at the end of the game, right? When the game is finished, it is done giving you things. However, it's the small puzzles and the small challenges along the way that make it more rewarding, right? So now I got to talk about Dead by Daylight. I'm going to talk about League of Legends a little bit too. But I have a problem with playing Killer in Dead by Daylight because it's not rewarding. And normally what you think is, okay, so what makes it not rewarding, right? What would be a rewarding action? So a rewarding action is something that directly impacts a game, right? And the way I see it, the only way for a killer to impact the game in any real way, shape, or form is to get a kill, right? Because it's the only time where your action directly impairs the survivor, right? Now, arguably, getting a hook should do the same thing, right? Well, a lot of those feelings end up feeling pretty mute, in all honesty, because what happens is you leave them while they're struggling on the hook. You leave them, their teammate comes over, unhooks them, and then heals them up. So literally all of that time and effort feels wasted when it should be the most rewarding part of the game, right? Because it's not permanent. Now keep in mind, survivors have a different thing going on, right? Where they complete a gen, and each time they complete a gen, I as the killer, can't go back and put that gen back into a problematic state for them, right? Like, no matter what, those gens are going to get done, and it's solid and concrete, where the killer's motivations aren't concrete, and that's a problem, right? Well, the other problem is that they try to add an extrinsic motivation for people to essentially interact more in the game, right? So there's motivations for people to go get unhooks, heal other people, or get chased, or so there's a whole bunch of other things going on, right? That they want to extrinsically motivate by giving people blood points. There's a couple problems with that. So the first one being how easily it is to waste blood points, because 9 times out of 10, I throw them in characters that I'll never use again, right? 9 times out of 10, if I do get something on a character I actually use, I'm not going to use that item because why, right? Like, you can only use so many items, and there's a lot of fluff. You tend to not get anything of value out of it. Meaning, you also don't get anything of value in the game, right? So, in all honesty, you end up putting all of these blood points in, and also, it's such a delay. For example, I might not use any of those things for days, weeks. I might just never use them at all. So, is that actually rewarding? No, it's not. A reward has to be impactful and almost immediate, right? In order for it to work, in order for me to feel validated, something has to happen that is irreversible in that moment, right? So getting a kill, irreversible in that moment, they're out of the game, you feel like you've accomplished something, right? Now, is that the most healthy way to play the game? No, because people don't like getting tunneled, they don't like getting camped, they don't like getting removed from the game that early, right? So I'm not quite sure how that whole thing would end up impacting. And I know I'm just talking this from a very outside perspective, and that this is just an example I'm using. But let's take League of Legends, right? So League of Legends, 2 teams going down, trying to destroy the Nexus. Obviously, the Nexus on each player's side is what you want to get at, right? Like, that's the goal. The goal is just to get to that Nexus. But along the way, you end up destroying towers, getting kills, things like that. And those are extrinsic motivations that can tell that you are making progress, right? So that was something they implemented in DBD not too long ago, was the hook counter, right? And going through the hook counter was like, oh, look how well you're doing. Look at how much you've progressed the game. But the fact that it doesn't impact how the game is being played is the problem, right? So like in League of Legends, when you destroy a tower, you have access to more of the map, right? You have more map pressure. You can go around in their jungle a little more. You can go to another lane and help out a little more because you have more room to be able to let these things fluctuate back and forth, right? And that's part of the reward to get to that end goal, right? Now, I'm not saying any of these things are perfect. I'm not saying that I could do better in any of these aspects, but I do want to point out that the extrinsic motivations, working like breadcrumbs to get to intrinsic results, right? Like you want somebody to be intrinsically involved. Like if you're going on dates and stuff, right? You want little extrinsic motivations for when people do the right thing, right? Like it's conditioning. This is the same thing Pavlov did with dogs, right? Like, oh, look, you want to get a treat? I'm going to ring this bell every time before I give you a treat. So now I'm just going to ring the bell and you're going to start salivating, right? Like that's the whole entire idea. Because eventually the idea of that bell ringing or that thing happening gets your attention. It immediately invokes a response, and that's what people are trying to do with games, and why games can sometimes be very, very addicting, right? And it's not a terrible thing, right? Like there's plenty of worse things you could be doing. Heck, I'd much rather have people play games than go out and graffiti things, right? I don't it's just kind of an understanding, but you do have to know how these things work and why they work, right? And know that if you're designing a game, that other people are going to take advantage of these little things. For example, there's somebody who wanted to help with a game design, which I said, okay, all right. The first thing I asked is what the loop is, right? Because you need to know what the loop is, and you need to know that, hey, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to walk a place, right? And then when you walk a place, you're going to meet somebody in the town. They're going to tell you what to do. So you go out and you do the thing, you come back, and they'll give you money. Like that's the loop, right? But you also have to know how that loop can be, how that loop can vary, right? So maybe what you're looking for wasn't there. Maybe someone else had it. Or maybe one of my favorite examples is for a puzzle game, right? Where it's like, hey, I want a puzzle. It has to do with electronics, and then we can just have a circuit board, and then you can figure out what's going on the circuit board, and then when you figure it out, then you can solve the puzzle, right? Which sounds great on paper, right? Like it sounds like, hey, we're actually doing something very intellectual, very, very difficult to do. There's a lot of logic, there's a lot of thinking behind it. Like it's very, very cool that way. But without the extrinsic motivation of opening something or discovering something or being able to apply it in the now, means that overall the entire thing is going to fall flat, right? Like, are people going to make it to the end of the first puzzle? Probably, right? Like usually at that point they're pretty motivated. They've got their own interests. They're like, hey, look, I'm going to try this game. Is that going to carry them through the 30th level? Probably not, right? And you have to realize that we're definitely in a time where people's time and attention are being monetized, right? Like that is the number one currency is people's attention right now. And if you want to assess a game and you want to assess a game quickly, right? You have to realize what the extrinsic motivation is going to be that's going to keep you hooked and involved. And if that's actually going to keep you involved beyond the game itself. And I bring this up. There's a game. What was it called? God, it was a really popular game. Anthem, right? So Anthem comes out, and what makes it unique? What makes it different? What's the gameplay loop? What are the rewards that are going to keep me coming back? And are those rewards enough for me not to look at another game and go, hey, this one is more rewarding. This is what's going to keep my attention more. This is going to be a better use of my time and effort. And you have to think, what are in which ways are they rewarding? And when Anthem 2 comes out and the rewards that were normally just part of gameplay are locked behind paywalls, it's not going to be as rewarding. It's just not. When the rewarding aspects are reach into your wallet and give us money, they're not rewarding, right? They're removed from your actual interaction with the game, and that has to do a lot with what how people view games now, right? Where bigger companies devalue their games by monetizing what people's time and effort are, right? So it's like, hey, don't worry, you can earn all this stuff in game. Technically, in League of Legends right now, you can earn every single skin just by randomly rolling it in or by playing the game enough, right? But what does selling it do? It means that whatever time and effort you're willing to invest to get to that reward, well, I could work for an hour and get that skin right now. It devalues people's actual playtime and their willingness to interact with the game. And I just wanted to point that out. I know there's a whole bunch of other things that we could go into. For example, how people have been doing this with relationships, giving gifts to other people so that people look at them in a different way, and then using it as emotional manipulation. Being like, hey, I'm not going to be around. And then, obviously when you say you're not going to be around, then those gifts are going away. That validation is going away. But it's also not going to be a genuine validation regardless. Because if it's constant, right? Like if it's constant, you constantly get something in Dead by Daylight, right? Like you constantly get these things. Are these things worth it, right? Like are they getting use out of it? Are they big enough for to keep people's attention? And the overwhelming majority is no. They're not big enough to keep people's attention. People tend to keep attention by acting like trolls or being jerks or whatever, and that's where the player base ends up, right? Like your player base ends up in a very, very terrible place because there's no reward in playing the game in a way that is healthy, right? That's where you start getting people that are, they consider things toxic, right? And toxicity comes into it too, because if you want to reward toxicity, right? So we talk about intrinsic and extrinsic. The extrinsic reward is getting someone out of the game early with a killer, right? So if I am rewarded for playing the game, like tunneling, camping, stuff like that's how I'm rewarded. Like you can't blame people for doing the things that they're rewarded for doing, right? If it makes the game easier, if that's what you need to do to feel like you have an impact in the game, then that's not a problem with the player. That's a problem with how the game is designed, right? And I just wanted to point that out because a lot of people haven't quite grasped that concept, haven't quite grasped why I get angry at the game developers rather than the players who decide to play things that let's just say are widely considered unhealthy for the game, right? And a lot of people complain about other people using them as opposed to complain to the developers that, hey, these things are needing some sort of revamp, some sort of change, some sort of identity that would be better. Like this is all stuff that would be way, way, way better if you just took it as it needed to be, you know what I mean? But I'm just gonna leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. There's so much I wanted to talk about, but please, if you guys have a concept that you guys want me to talk about, game theory, or I think my next one might be about overlays, HUD designs, stuff like that. I know that DBD just had its HUD design rework not too long ago, and a whole bunch of people hated it, and that there's a lot of material out there on it, but I wanted my own spin on it, give it a little bit more thought after I process things, and let people kind of speak their piece. So that might be where I go next, and that's going to have its own thing, but please let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take it easy.